A husband who trusted his wife completely. A simple message saying she had to work late. But when he unexpectedly saw her car parked somewhere else that night, everything he believed about his marriage began to crumble. What he discovered next would change his life forever.
This is a fictional American romance story created using AI for entertainment purposes only, intended strictly for audiences 18 years and older and not suitable for children under 18.
The first thing Nathan Cole noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind that settled into the corners of a house when someone who used to fill it with sound simply wasn't there anymore. Their home in Evanston stood on a quiet, tree-lined street just 3 blocks from Lake Michigan. In summer, the sidewalks were filled with joggers and dogs and college students from Northwestern. But in November, the wind coming off the lake turned the neighborhood into something colder, lonelier. Nathan stood in the kitchen with a wooden spoon in his hand, staring at the simmering pot of pasta sauce on the stove. 6:47 p.m. He glanced at his phone again. No message. Emily had said she would be home around 6, but that had become a flexible concept lately. He stirred the sauce slowly, the smell of garlic and basil filling the kitchen. The recipe had been Emily's favorite when they first moved into this house 6 years ago. Back then, she used to stand behind him, arms wrapped around his waist, stealing taste straight from the spoon. "You always add too much salt," she would tease. "And you always complain but finish the whole bowl." Those small moments felt like another lifetime now. Nathan turned the heat down and wiped his hands on a towel. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text. Emily. He opened it. "Running late again. Big meeting with the West Coast team. Don't wait up." He stared at the message longer than necessary. The words themselves weren't unusual, but the pattern was. 3 nights this week already. He typed back. "Okay. Want me to save you some dinner?" The typing bubble appeared for a moment, then disappeared. A minute later, another message arrived. "No need. I'll probably grab something near the office." Nathan locked the phone and set it down gently. Across the kitchen island, their open-concept living room glowed with the soft blue light of the television. The news anchor was talking about rising mortgage rates, but the sound was low enough to barely register. He poured himself a glass of red wine and sat down at the dining table meant for 6. 1 plate, 1 fork, 1 glass. Their wedding photo hung on the wall nearby. It had been taken on a windy September afternoon in Napa Valley. Emily's hair was blowing across her face while she laughed at something the photographer had said. Nathan remembered that moment clearly. The warmth of the sun, the taste of champagne, the certainty that he had somehow won the lottery of life. He took a slow sip of wine. When had that certainty started to fade? Emily Cole was the kind of woman people noticed when she walked into a room. Not just because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she carried herself with a kind of quiet confidence that made people instinctively turn toward her. Nathan had first seen her 12 years earlier at a charity gala in downtown Chicago. He had been standing awkwardly near the bar, wearing a suit he couldn't quite afford at the time, when Emily approached him holding 2 glasses of champagne. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," she had said. Nathan had blinked at her. "I was thinking the same about you." She smiled. "Then maybe we should rescue each other." That had been the beginning. Back then, Emily was a marketing coordinator trying to climb her way up in a tech startup. Nathan was an ambitious architect working late nights at a small firm. They had built their lives side by side, promotion by promotion, apartment by apartment, dream by dream. And now, here they were. Except somewhere along the way, the spaces between them had grown wider. Nathan finished half his dinner before realizing he wasn't hungry anymore. He covered Emily's untouched plate with plastic wrap and placed it in the refrigerator. The house creaked softly as the wind picked up outside. By 9 o'clock, he had moved to the living room couch with his laptop, pretending to review building renderings for a new downtown project. But his attention kept drifting. Emily still hadn't texted again. At 9:18 p.m., he finally called. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then it went to voicemail. "Hey, it's me," Nathan said after the beep. "Just checking in. Drive safe when you're heading home." He hung up quickly, suddenly aware of how tired he sounded. Emily arrived at 11:07 p.m. Nathan heard the garage door open before the front door clicked. He looked up from the couch as she stepped inside. Her heels tapped softly against the hardwood floor. She wore a charcoal coat over a dark blouse, her hair pulled loosely over one shoulder. A faint scent of perfume drifted through the room as she walked past him. "Hey," she said, dropping her purse on the console table. "Hey, you're still awake?" "Couldn't sleep." Emily exhaled and slipped off her shoes. "Long day," she said. Nathan studied her face. There was something there. Fatigue, maybe? Or distance? "Did the meeting go okay?" he asked. She nodded while heading toward the kitchen. "Yeah, Adrian was pushing hard on the new campaign timeline, but I think we convinced him to give us another month." Nathan frowned slightly. "Adrian? The investor I told you about. Right." Nathan vaguely remembered the name from a conversation weeks ago. Emily opened the refrigerator and saw the covered plate. "You made pasta? Your favorite?" She hesitated for half a second. "I actually already ate." "Near the office?" "Yeah," she said quickly. Nathan nodded slowly. "Good." Emily poured herself a glass of water. They stood there for a moment in the quiet kitchen. Two people who had shared a life for more than a decade, yet somehow unsure what to say next. Emily broke the silence first. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to take a shower." "Okay." She disappeared down the hallway. Nathan sat alone at the dining table again, listening to the distant sound of running water. And for the first time, a small, uncomfortable thought crossed his mind. What if working late didn't mean what he thought it meant anymore? Rain in Chicago had a way of turning the city into a mirror. By late evening, the streets of downtown shimmered under reflections of neon signs, traffic lights, and the soft yellow glow spilling from restaurant windows. The wet pavement blurred everything into something cinematic, beautiful, and distant at the same time. Nathan Cole drove slowly along Wabash Avenue, the windshield wipers moving in a steady rhythm. Back and forth, back and forth. He should have still been at the office. The new high-rise project in Fulton Market was entering its final design phase, and his team had planned another late night reviewing structural revisions. But around 5 o'clock, the client had abruptly postponed the meeting until next week. So Nathan had done something he rarely did. He left work early. The quiet inside the car felt unusual. Normally his evenings were packed with deadlines, calls, or the comforting routine of coming home to Emily. Tonight, though, the empty hours stretched ahead of him. He considered driving straight home to Evanston, but the thought of sitting alone in the silent house again made him hesitate. Instead, he turned east, toward River North. The neighborhood pulsed with life even on rainy nights. Restaurants buzzed with conversations, cocktail bars glowed with warm light, and young professionals moved through the sidewalks with umbrellas and laughter. Nathan slowed at a red light. To his right, a couple dashed through the rain toward a small Italian restaurant, the woman clutching the man's arm as they laughed. For a moment, Nathan watched them. Emily used to do that too, running through rain without caring about her hair, pulling him along like the night belonged to them. The light turned green. Nathan drove forward. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, maybe just distraction. The rain intensified as he turned onto a narrower street lined with boutique hotels and quiet cocktail lounges. His headlights swept across parked cars, silver, black, blue. Then, his hands tightened on the steering wheel. A familiar shape sat halfway down the block. A dark gray Volvo XC60. Nathan's chest tightened slightly. There were a lot of Volvos in Chicago, but something about this one felt too familiar. He slowed the car. The rain blurred the license plate for a moment before the wipers cleared the windshield. Illinois plate. EJ4736. Nathan felt something inside him drop. That was Emily's car. He pulled over slowly, parking across the street. The engine remained running. For a long moment, he simply stared. The Volvo sat quietly beneath a street lamp, rainwater running down its windows. He checked the time. 8:41 p.m. Emily had texted him earlier. Running late again. Big meeting. His eyes moved upward. Directly behind the car stood a narrow brick building with tall windows and warm lighting. A sign above the entrance read, "The Older House." Nathan recognized it vaguely. A boutique hotel. Not one of the massive corporate chains, something smaller, more intimate. The kind of place couples chose for romantic weekends or discreet meetings. Nathan's heartbeat began to quicken. No, there had to be a simple explanation. Maybe Emily had a meeting here. Companies used hotel lounges all the time for business dinners. Yes, that made sense. He exhaled slowly. But he didn't drive away. Instead, Nathan sat there with both hands on the wheel, watching the entrance. People moved in and out of the hotel under umbrellas. A young couple, a man in a business suit talking on his phone, two women laughing loudly. Each time the door opened, warm light spilled onto the wet sidewalk. Nathan's eyes kept drifting back to the Volvo. Emily's car. He knew every detail of it, the small scratch near the rear bumper from when she misjudged the parking meter 2 years ago, the Northwestern alumni sticker in the corner of the back window. This was definitely hers. Another thought crept in. Maybe she was meeting that investor, Adrian. Nathan frowned slightly. Emily had mentioned him twice recently. Adrian wants the campaign launched by January. Adrian thinks we should target the West Coast market. Nathan had pictured someone older, a gray-haired venture capitalist in an expensive suit. Nothing suspicious about that, right? Nathan checked the time again. 8:52 p.m. Rain tapped against the roof of the car like quiet fingers. He should leave. This felt ridiculous. He trusted Emily. They had been married for 8 years. But his body refused to move. Something deeper, something instinctive, kept him rooted in place. Then the hotel door opened again. Nathan's breath caught. A woman stepped out. Not Emily, someone else. He exhaled. You're being paranoid. Nathan rubbed his forehead. The rational part of his brain tried to regain control. Emily had never given him a reason to doubt her before. Not once. Yet the unease in his chest refused to fade. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. At 9:07 p.m., the hotel door opened again. This time, Nathan felt the world tilt. Emily stepped outside. Even through the rain and distance, he recognized her immediately. Her posture, the way she brushed her hair back from her face. She wore the same charcoal coat from earlier that morning. Nathan's breath became shallow, but what froze him wasn't just seeing her. It was who walked beside her. A man, tall, confident, mid-40s maybe. He held the door open for her with casual familiarity. They stood under the awning for a moment, close enough that Nathan could see their faces illuminated by the warm hotel lights. The man said something. Emily laughed. Nathan had not heard that laugh in weeks. The man placed a hand lightly on her lower back. Not possessive, not inappropriate, but intimate, comfortable, like a gesture that had happened before. Nathan's fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned pale. Emily didn't move away. They talked for another moment before she pulled her coat tighter against the rain. Then she walked toward her car. Nathan sank lower in his seat instinctively. His paws pounded in his ears. Emily unlocked the Volvo and slid inside. The man remained under the awning, watching her. She started the engine. For a brief second, Nathan saw her face through the windshield. Calm, relaxed, almost happy. Not the tired woman who had walked into their house the night before. The Volvo pulled away from the curb. Nathan waited until it disappeared around the corner. The man from the hotel finally stepped back inside. Rain continued falling across the empty street. Nathan sat there in silence. His chest felt hollow. Not anger, not yet. Just something colder. A quiet realization forming in the space where certainty used to live. For 8 years, Nathan had believed he understood his marriage. Tonight, sitting in his car across from a boutique hotel in River North, he realized something terrifying. He might not understand it at all. The next morning, Chicago woke under a pale gray sky. Nathan Cole stood at the kitchen counter, holding a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. The lake wind rattled the window softly, carrying the distant sound of early traffic along Sheridan Road. Across the kitchen, Emily moved with quiet efficiency. She wore a navy blazer and black slacks, her hair tied back neatly. To anyone watching, she looked like the same composed, capable marketing executive she had always been. But Nathan noticed something new, or maybe something he had never allowed himself to notice before. She didn't look at him, not directly. Her eyes moved around the room, coffee maker, phone screen, handbag, but somehow always drifted away when they came near his. Big day? Nathan asked casually. Emily slipped her laptop into her bag. Always. Her tone was light, too light. Nathan took a sip of coffee. More meetings tonight? Emily hesitated for half a second. Then she nodded. Probably. Adrian wants to finalize the Q1 strategy before the board review. Nathan studied her carefully. Adrian. There was that name again. Sounds intense, Nathan said. Emily gave a small smile. It's startup life. Nathan nodded. He had heard that phrase many times before, but this morning it landed differently. Emily grabbed her coat. I should go. Traffic's going to be awful. Nathan walked her to the door out of habit. She kissed his cheek lightly. "I'll text if I'm late." The door closed behind her. Nathan stood there for several seconds after she left. The house felt larger than usual, and much quieter. For the first time in his life, Nathan did something he never thought he would do. He checked his wife's social media. He sat at the dining table with his laptop open, staring at Emily's Instagram page. Her latest post had gone up 3 days ago. A photo of the Chicago skyline taken from the rooftop bar of her office building. Caption: "Another long night building something great." There were dozens of likes, comments from co-workers. One comment stood out. Adrian Blake, "Worth the late nights." Nathan stared at the name. He clicked it. Adrian Blake's profile opened. The man in the photo was younger than Nathan expected. Early 40s maybe. Dark hair touched with grey at the temples. The kind of confident smile that belonged on magazine covers. His account wasn't private. Nathan scrolled slowly. Photos from business conferences, luxury hotels, private jets, a yacht somewhere in the Mediterranean. Another photo caught his eye. Adrian standing in front of a modern glass building. The caption read, "Excited to partner with Brightforge Marketing as we scale the next phase." Brightforge, Emily's company. Nathan leaned back in his chair. So Adrian wasn't just an investor, he was the investor. Over the next week, Nathan began noticing things. Small things. Patterns. The first was Emily's phone. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter while she showered or cooked dinner. Now it rarely left her hand. When messages arrived, she glanced at them quickly and turned the screen away. Once, Nathan caught a glimpse of a notification banner before she logged it. Adrian B. Just a name. No message visible. But it lingered in Nathan's mind like an unfinished sentence. Then there were the meetings. Monday night, late strategy call. Wednesday night, client dinner. Friday night, board prep. Each explanation sounded reasonable, yet somehow they all carried the same strange feeling. Nathan began tracking them mentally. Not intentionally at first, just quietly. Tuesday evening, Emily arrived home early. They ate dinner together for the first time in days. Conversation stayed polite, surface level. Work, weather, a new restaurant opening downtown. At one point, Nathan asked, "So what exactly does Adrian do?" Emily paused while lifting her wine glass. "He's a venture partner. He helped fund our last expansion." "You work with him a lot?" "Sometimes." Nathan nodded. "Seems like a big personality." Emily gave a small shrug. "He's persuasive." The way she said it lingered in the air. Nathan watched her carefully. Persuasive how? Emily met his eyes for a brief second. Then she smiled. "Like all investors, they push you." Nathan didn't respond. Later that night, while Emily showered upstairs, Nathan sat on the couch staring at his phone. The memory of River North replayed in his mind. The rain, the hotel, the man with his hand on Emily's back. Nathan opened the browser, typed 2 words, Adrian Blake, Chicago. The search results appeared instantly. Articles, interviews, photos. Nathan clicked the first one. Chicago Business Journal. Adrian Blake, founder of Northbridge Ventures, has built a reputation as one of the city's most aggressive tech investors. Nathan skimmed through the article. 43 years old, Stanford MBA, net worth estimated at over $200 million. Known for identifying fast-growing startups and scaling them quickly. Another line caught Nathan's attention. Blake is also known for his hands-on involvement with executive teams, often mentoring founders and senior leadership directly. Nathan closed the laptop slowly. Hands-on. The phrase felt heavier than it should have. A few days later, Nathan left his office earlier than usual again. This time, the decision wasn't accidental. He told himself he simply wanted to beat traffic. But his route told a different story. Instead of heading north toward Evanston, Nathan drove downtown, toward Brightforge Marketing's office building. He parked across the street and waited. At 6:18 p.m., employees began exiting the building in groups, laughing, talking, carrying laptops. At 6:31 p.m., Emily stepped outside. Nathan's breath caught. She wasn't alone. Adrian Blake walked beside her. Even from across the street, Nathan recognized him instantly. Tall, confident posture, dark coat. They weren't touching, but they moved together in a way that felt easy, familiar. Adrian said something that made Emily laugh. That same laugh Nathan had heard outside the hotel. Nathan felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Emily glanced at her phone. Then she looked back at Adrian.
"Dinner?" Nathan imagined him asking.
Emily hesitated for only a second, then she nodded. They walked down the street together, side by side. Nathan watched until they disappeared around the corner. He remained in the car for a long time afterward. The city lights flickered on around him as dusk deepened into night, and somewhere deep inside, the quiet suspicion that had begun in the rain outside that boutique hotel finally took root. Nathan still didn't know the truth, but he knew one thing now with painful certainty. Something in his marriage had started shifting, and whatever it was moving further away from him every day. By the time December arrived, Chicago had turned colder in a way that crept into people's bones. The lake wind sharpened, daylight disappeared earlier, and the city lights reflected against low winter clouds like a permanent twilight. Nathan Cole had begun noticing time differently, not in hours, but in patterns. Emily leaving the house at 8:10 every morning, her phone buzzing most often between 7:30 and 8 p.m. The nights she came home before 10, rare now. She seemed distracted, drifting through the house like someone only half present. Nathan never asked questions directly. Instead, he watched, quietly, carefully. And the more he watched, the more the small details began forming something larger, something he was not ready to name. One Thursday evening, Nathan shut down his computer earlier than usual. The office had thinned out, leaving only the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the distant clatter of a cleaning cart somewhere down the hall. It was 5:47 p.m. Emily had texted him an hour earlier. Dinner meeting with Adrian and the strategy team. Might be late. Nathan stared at the message again. Something about it felt rehearsed, predictable, like a line repeated too many times. He grabbed his coat. Outside, the city air carried the sharp scent of approaching snow. Nathan slid into his car and sat there for a moment with both hands resting on the steering wheel. He could go home, pretend the unease inside him wasn't growing heavier every day. Or he could do something else. Something he had never done in 12 years of knowing Emily. Nathan started the engine. The bright Forge office building stood tall against the darkening sky, its windows glowing with the steady rhythm of late-working professionals. Nathan parked across the street again. His pulse felt strangely calm now. Less like panic, more like anticipation. Employees began leaving around 6. Small groups moved toward the train station or nearby restaurants. At 6:32 p.m., Emily appeared. She wore a long black coat and a gray scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. Nathan watched her check her phone while stepping onto the sidewalk. A moment later, Adrian Blake walked out behind her. Even from this distance, the man's presence seemed effortless. Tall, relaxed, the kind of confidence money tended to cultivate. Adrian said something as he approached. Emily smiled. That smile again. Nathan had begun recognizing it. It wasn't the polite smile she gave co-workers, or the tired smile she sometimes gave Nathan lately. This one was different. Warmer. Alive. The two of them walked together down the block. Nathan waited 3 seconds, then pulled into traffic. River North was busy, despite the cold. Nathan parked half a block away from the restaurant Emily and Adrian entered. La Vigna, an upscale Italian place with soft lighting and floor-to-ceiling windows. Nathan hesitated outside for a moment. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. You could still walk away. You could still go home. But his feet moved before the thought finished. Inside, the restaurant hummed with quiet conversations and clinking glasses. A hostess greeted him. Table for one? Nathan forced a polite smile. Yes. She led him to a small table near the back. From there, he could see them. Emily and Adrian sat near the window. Nathan's chest tightened slightly. They weren't touching, but their posture told its own story. Adrian leaned forward as he spoke, completely focused on her. Emily listened in a way Nathan hadn't seen in years, chin resting lightly on her hand, eyes attentive, engaged. Wine arrived. They toasted. Nathan couldn't hear the words, but he could read the rhythm between them. Comfortable pauses, shared glances, moments where the laughter overlapped naturally. The waiter came to Nathan's table. Can I start you with something? Just a bourbon, Nathan said. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. Across the room, Emily brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Adrian watched her with an expression Nathan recognized immediately. admiration. Nathan swallowed slowly. The bourbon arrived. He took a long sip. The warmth burned down his throat. Dinner lasted nearly 2 hours. Nathan barely touched the food he ordered. He simply watched, not obsessively, just quietly, studying the details. Adrian occasionally placed his hand on the table between them. Emily leaned closer when he spoke. Once, she laughed hard enough to briefly touch his arm. Small gestures, nothing obvious, nothing that would scandalize anyone else in the room. But to Nathan, they were louder than any confession. Around 9:15 p.m., the check arrived. They stood outside the restaurant together beneath the awning. Snow had begun falling lightly. Chicago's first real snowfall of the season. Adrian said something that made Emily pause. She looked down for a moment, then back up at him. Nathan watched as Adrian gently touched her arm. Not possessive, not forceful, just familiar. Emily didn't pull away. They stood like that for several seconds. Two figures framed by falling snow and city lights. Then Emily nodded slightly. They walked down the street together, not toward the parking garage, but toward the quieter part of River North, where boutique hotels lined the blocks. Nathan felt something inside him crack. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet fracture spreading through something he had believed was solid. He sat in his car long after they disappeared. Snow gathered slowly on the windshield. The city moved around him, cars passing, people laughing, life continuing. Nathan stared ahead. For years he had believed marriage was like architecture. You built it carefully, brick by brick, foundation first, strong enough to last. But tonight, watching Emily walk away beside another man, Nathan realized something terrifying. Even the most beautiful structures could develop invisible cracks, and sometimes, by the time you noticed them, the damage was already deeper than you ever imagined. Emily Cole used to love mornings. Years ago, when she and Nathan first moved into the house in Evanston, she would wake before him and walk to the lake just as the sun began rising over Lake Michigan. The air would be cold, the water impossibly calm, and the entire city felt like it belonged only to the early risers. Nathan used to meet her there sometimes. They would sit on the rocks with paper cups of coffee, talking about everything and nothing. Future plans, ridiculous dreams, the buildings Nathan wanted to design one day. Back then, the future had felt wide open. Now mornings felt different. Emily stood in front of the bathroom mirror, fastening her earrings, studying her own reflection with a strange sense of distance. 36 years old, successful, married, a life many people envied, and yet something inside her had been quietly empty for years. She picked up her phone from the counter. A new message waited. "Adrian, dinner tonight? I know a place you haven't tried yet." Emily stared at the screen for a moment longer than she should have. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Downstairs, Nathan moved around the kitchen. She could hear the soft clink of dishes and the low hum of the coffee machine. For a moment, guilt flickered through her chest. Then she typed, "Maybe. Long day today." The reply came almost instantly. "That's exactly why you should come." Emily exhaled slowly. Adrian had a way of making everything sound simple. The truth was, Emily hadn't meant for any of this to happen. When Adrian Blake first appeared at Brightforge 9 months earlier, he had simply been another investor. Another powerful name attached to the company's growing list of venture partners. But Adrian was different from the others. He didn't just sit through presentations and ask about quarterly projections. He asked questions about people, about leadership, about ambition. The first time they had spoken alone was after a strategy meeting. Everyone else had already left the conference room. Emily was packing up her laptop when Adrian leaned against the table across from her. "You're the one actually running the marketing side of this company, aren't you?" he said. Emily raised an eyebrow. "I have a boss, technically." "Sure," Adrian said with a small smile. "But you're the one everyone listens to." Emily laughed politely. "You've known us for one meeting." Adrian shrugged. "That's usually enough." Something about the way he said it unsettled her slightly. But it also stirred something else. Recognition. Weeks turned into months. Adrian began requesting her presence in more meetings. Then private strategy discussions. Then late-night calls when the West Coast team logged in. Emily told herself it was normal. She was the senior marketing director. Of course the lead investor would want her involved. But the conversation slowly shifted. They still talked about business, campaign launches, market positioning, funding rounds. Yet between those topics other things slipped in. How long have you lived in Chicago? What made you choose marketing? Do you ever think about starting your own company? No one had asked Emily those kinds of questions in years. At home, Nathan and she had slowly stopped talking about dreams. Not intentionally. Life just filled the space with other things. Bills, work, schedules, silence. Adrian noticed the silence in ways Nathan never seemed to. Emily still remembered the first time she realized something had changed. It was late September. They were standing on the rooftop terrace of Adrian's office building after a board meeting. The city skyline stretched endlessly around them, glowing in the twilight. Adrian handed her a glass of wine. "You look like someone carrying too many thoughts," he said. Emily laughed softly. "That's just my face." "I don't think so." He leaned against the railing beside her. "What would you be doing," Adrian asked, "if you weren't working at Brightforge?" Emily stared out at the city lights. No one had asked her that in years. "I don't know," she admitted. "You do." She hesitated. "I used to want to start my own agency." "Used to?" Emily shrugged. "Life gets complicated." Adrian studied her for a moment. "You don't seem like someone who settles." Emily didn't answer, because she wasn't sure anymore if that was true. The first time they had dinner together alone was technically an accident, or at least that's what Emily told herself. A meeting ran late. The rest of the team cancelled. Adrian suggested grabbing food nearby. She should have said no, but she didn't. Dinner lasted 3 hours. They talked about business at first, then about Chicago, then about travel. Adrian had stories from everywhere: London, Tokyo, Barcelona. Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: light, seen. When she finally checked her phone that night, she saw Nathan's message. "Want me to save you dinner?" Emily stared at it for a long moment. A wave of guilt washed over her. Nathan was a good man, kind, steady, the kind of husband most people would consider a blessing. But somewhere along the way, their marriage had become quiet. Too quiet. Like two people living side by side instead of truly seeing each other. Adrian filled that silence with energy, with curiosity, with attention. And an attention, Emily realized, could be dangerously intoxicating. Now, months later, Emily sat alone in her car outside Brightforge's office building. The city glowed through the windshield. Her phone buzzed again. "Adrian, I'm already near the restaurant. No pressure." Emily closed her eyes briefly. This had crossed the line long ago. She knew that. Even if nothing physical had happened yet, the emotional gravity between them was undeniable. She thought about Nathan, about the quiet dinners, the comfortable routines, the life they had built carefully over more than a decade. Then she thought about the way Adrian looked at her, like she was still someone extraordinary. Emily opened her eyes. Her heart beat faster. She started the engine. And as she pulled out into the Chicago traffic, she knew something with painful clarity. She wasn't just meeting Adrian Blake for dinner anymore. She was stepping deeper into a world that felt alive again, even if it meant risking everything she already had. The first real snow of the winter arrived quietly. Nathan Cole stood by the living room window early Saturday morning, watching soft flakes drift down over the quiet streets of Evanston. The branches of the maple tree in their front yard had begun collecting thin layers of white, turning the neighborhood into something calm and deceptively peaceful. Inside the house, everything felt heavier. Emily had already left. She said she had an early strategy session with the executive team downtown. Nathan hadn't asked questions anymore. Not because he didn't want answers, but because he had started looking for them somewhere else. 3 weeks earlier, Nathan had crossed the line he never imagined himself approaching. He hired someone. The idea first came to him during a sleepless night around 2 in the morning, when the quiet of the house seemed louder than ever. A private investigator. The phrase sounded dramatic, almost ridiculous. But the next day during lunch break, Nathan found himself sitting across from a middle-aged woman named Karen Alvarez in a small office above a law firm in downtown Chicago. Karen had calm eyes and the kind of steady voice that suggested she had seen far worse situations than his. "So," she said gently, folding her hands on the desk, "tell me what's going on." Nathan hesitated. Saying the words aloud felt like acknowledging something permanent. "I think my wife might be having an affair." Karen didn't react with surprise. "How long have you suspected?" "A few weeks," Nathan admitted. "Do you have a name?" Nathan exhaled slowly. "Adrian Blake." Karen's eyebrows lifted slightly. "The investor, you know him?" "Public figure," she said. "People with money tend to show up in my work from time to time." Nathan looked down at his hands. "I don't want anything messy," he said quietly. "I just need to know the truth." Karen nodded once. That's usually how it starts. Now, standing by the window weeks later, Nathan held a small manila envelope in his hand. Karen had delivered it the night before. He hadn't opened it yet, not until this morning. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. Nathan finally walked to the dining table and sat down. He opened it slowly. Inside were photographs. The first image showed Emily and Adrian leaving a restaurant together. Nathan's stomach tightened. The second showed them walking along a quiet street in River North. The third, Nathan closed his eyes briefly before looking again. It was taken outside the older house. Emily and Adrian stood close together under the hotel awning. Adrian's hand rested on her waist. Emily's face was turned toward him. And in the next photo, they were kissing. Nathan fed the room till slightly. He placed the photos down carefully. For several minutes he simply sat there, breathing slowly. The proof he had been searching for was finally undeniable. And somehow, that certainty hurt even more than the suspicion. But there was something else inside the envelope. A thin stack of printed documents. Nathan frowned slightly and began reading. At first it looked like a timeline. Dates, locations, Emily and Adrian meeting at restaurants, hotels, office buildings. But as Nathan kept reading, he noticed something unexpected. Notes. Observations Karen had written in the margins. Multiple late-night meetings at Brightforge office. Argument overheard in parking garage between Emily and Blake. Nathan paused. Argument? He continued reading. Another note appeared. Subject, Emily, appears distressed during December 4th meeting. Blake seen comforting her. Nathan leaned back slowly. This wasn't the simple narrative he had imagined. There were more notes. Conversation partially overheard outside restaurant. Nathan read the transcription Karen had typed beneath it. Emily, you don't understand what this could cost me. Adrian, you're already risking everything by staying where you are. Emily, it's not that simple. Adrian, it never is. Nathan stared at the page. He flipped further. Another note. Subject frequently remains at office after others leave. And another. Observed emotional exchange between subjects, no physical contact. Nathan frowned. Emotional exchange? He read the final section. Karen had attached a summary of background research she had done. It mentioned something Nathan had never known. 3 years before Nathan met Emily, she had briefly started a small marketing consultancy. It failed within a year. The failure left her with debt she spent several years paying off. Nathan felt a strange chill move through him. Emily had never told him about that. He turned the page. There was more. An email record Karen had somehow obtained from publicly accessible legal filings connected to Brightforge's funding rounds. In one of them, Adrian Blake had written directly to Emily. Nathan read the message slowly. Emily, you're wasting your talent building someone else's company. The agency idea you told me about deserves another chance. I'd invest in that tomorrow. Adrian Nathan leaned back in his chair. The room felt strangely quiet again. This wasn't just about an affair. It was about something deeper. Something Emily had been carrying long before Adrian appeared in their lives. Nathan picked up the photographs again. The image of Emily kissing Adrian burned into his mind. That part was undeniable. The betrayal was real. But now another question had begun forming beneath the pain. How long had Emily been struggling with things she had never told him? How many silent battles had she fought while their marriage slowly settled into routine? Nathan rubbed his eyes. Outside, the snowfall thickened, covering the street in soft white silence. For the first time since this nightmare began, Nathan realized something uncomfortable. He had been so focused on what Emily had done that he had never asked why. And somehow, that question felt just as frightening as the truth itself. Snow fell steadily across Chicago that night, covering the streets in a quiet white silence that softened the harsh edges of the city. Inside the house in Evanston, the silence felt very different. Nathan Cole sat at the dining table with the manila envelope in front of him. He had placed the photographs back inside, though their images still hovered in his mind like shadows he couldn't shake. The clock on the wall read 9:38 p.m. Emily had texted an hour earlier. Running late again. Bored with you, prep. Nathan didn't respond. He simply waited. The house creaked softly as the wind picked up outside. Snow tapped against the windows in faint whispers. The lake wind had grown stronger as the night deepened. At 10:12 p.m., the garage door rumbled open. Nathan's chest tightened. Footsteps echoed faintly through the hallway as Emily entered the house. Her coat was dusted with snow, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She kicked off her boots near the door, rubbing her hands together for warmth. God, it's freezing tonight, she said automatically. Then she looked up. Nathan was sitting at the dining table, waiting. Emily paused. You're still up? Nathan's voice was calm. We should talk. Something in his tone made her freeze, a subtle shift in the air. Emily slowly set her purse down on the counter. About what? Nathan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid the envelope across the table. Emily looked at it, her brow furrowed slightly. What's that? Open it. The room felt suddenly smaller. Emily hesitated before pulling the photographs out. The first image made her inhale sharply. Her face drained of color as she flipped through the rest. The restaurant, the street, the hotel, and finally, the kiss. For several seconds, Emily said nothing. Her hands trembled slightly as she lowered the photos to the table. Nathan watched her carefully. You hired someone, she said quietly. Yes. Emily nodded slowly, staring down at the images. I wondered when you would. Nathan felt a strange mix of emotions surge through him. You wondered? He repeated. Emily finally looked up. Her eyes were tired. Not shocked, not even defensive, just exhausted. How long? Nathan asked. The question hung in the air like a blade. Emily closed her eyes briefly. A few months. Nathan felt something inside his chest tighten. A few months, he repeated. Snow continued falling outside, thick and silent. Nathan leaned forward slightly. Do you love him? Emily didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked slowly to the kitchen sink and poured herself a glass of water. Her hands shook as she drank. When she turned back toward him, her voice was quiet. I don't know. Nathan laughed once, a hollow sound. That's comforting. Emily's eyes flashed with sudden emotion. You think this is easy for me? No, Nathan said coldly. I think it's incredibly convenient. Emily stared at him. For who? For you, Nathan said. You get excitement, adventure, a billionaire investor telling you how brilliant you are. That's not what this is. Then what is it, Emily? Her composure finally cracked. It's what happens when two people stop seeing each other. The words exploded out of her before she could stop them. Nathan blinked. What? Emily's voice trembled now. You think this just happened overnight? Nathan stood up slowly. You're blaming me? I'm explaining, she snapped. Great, Nathan said bitterly. Explain the part where you kiss another man outside the hotel. Emily flinched. Silence filled the room again. Finally she spoke, softer now. When was the last time you asked me if I was happy? Nathan stared at her. What does that? No, Emily said, shaking her head. Really asked. Nathan's mouth opened, then closed again. Emily laughed quietly, though there was no humor in it. Exactly. Nathan felt anger rising again. So this is my fault? I didn't say that. You basically did. Emily ran a hand through her hair, pacing slowly across the kitchen. You know what the worst part is? She said quietly. You don't even realize how far apart we've drifted. Nathan's voice hardened. You drifted, Emily, not me. She turned toward him sharply. You stopped talking to me years ago. That's not true. Really? She said. Tell me the last thing you know about my job. Nathan frowned. You the senior marketing director at... No, she interrupted. I mean the things that actually matter. Nathan hesitated. Emily continued. You didn't know I tried starting my own agency before we met. Nathan blinked. What? You didn't know I failed, or that it took 5 years to pay off the debt. Nathan felt the ground shift slightly beneath him. Why didn't you tell me? Emily's voice broke. Because every time I tried to talk about something deeper than work schedules or dinner plans, you were already halfway back to your laptop. Nathan stood frozen. I didn't realize. Exactly, she whispered. The world hung between them. Emily leaned against the counter, her shoulders slumping slightly. Adrian noticed, she said quietly. Nathan's jaw tightened. Of course he did. He listened, Emily continued. He asked questions. He believed I could do more with my career. Nathan's voice turned sharp. And that led to a hotel room? Emily shook her head quickly. It didn't start like that, but it ended there. Emily said nothing. The silence confirmed everything. Nathan felt something inside him finally give way. Not rage, not even heartbreak, just a deep aching exhaustion. For 8 years, he said quietly, I thought we were building something solid. Emily's eyes filled with tears. So did I. Snow continued falling outside, thick and relentless. Nathan looked at her for a long time. The woman standing across the kitchen, was still the same person he had fallen in love with all those years ago, and yet she felt like a stranger now. Finally, he asked the question he had been avoiding since that night in River North. What happens now? Emily didn't have an answer, and somehow that uncertainty felt more frightening than the betrayal itself. Chicago looked different the morning after the storm. Snow covered the streets in quiet layers, muting the usual sounds of traffic and footsteps. The city felt suspended, as if someone had pressed pause on the restless rhythm that normally defined it. Inside the house in Evanston, Nathan Cole woke before sunrise. For a few seconds, he forgot everything. Then the memory returned. The photographs, the argument, the silence that followed. Nathan turned his head toward the other side of the bed. Empty. The sheet was still smooth, untouched. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Nathan walked downstairs, expecting to see Emily in the kitchen, maybe sitting with a cup of coffee like she used 2 years ago. Instead, he found a note on the dining table. Just a single folded sheet of paper. His chest tightened as he picked it up. Emily's handwriting was careful but uneven. Nathan, I didn't sleep last night. I kept replaying everything we said and everything we didn't say. I know I hurt you. There's no version of this story where I'm not responsible for that. But I also know something broke between us long before Adrian appeared. Maybe we both felt it and didn't know how to fix it. Nathan sat down slowly. The words blurred slightly as he continued reading. I'm staying at a hotel for a few days. Not with him. Just somewhere quiet to think. You deserve honesty, even if it comes too late. Adrian offered to help me start my own agency months ago. I never told you because part of me thought you wouldn't take it seriously. That's not your fault entirely. I stopped telling you about the parts of myself that still wanted more. Maybe I was afraid of failing again. Nathan swallowed. He continued. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if we can fix this or if we even should. But I hope someday we can talk about it without anger. You were never just my husband, Nathan. You were the person who helped me believe in a future once. Emily. Nathan placed the letter down slowly. The room felt hollow. Not broken, just empty. 3 days passed before Nathan saw Emily again. Chicago's snow had begun melting, turning sidewalks into grey slush. Winter sunlight reflected off glass towers downtown, as if the storm had never happened. Nathan had taken time off work. He spent most of those days walking, along the lake, through quiet streets, trying to understand how a marriage that once felt so certain could unravel so quietly. On the 4th evening, Emily texted, Can we talk? Nathan stared at the message for a long time before replying. Okay. They met at a small cafe halfway between downtown and Evanston. Neutral ground. The place was nearly empty when Nathan arrived. Emily sat near the window, wrapped in a beige coat, her hands around a cup of tea. She looked tired. Not the polished professional version of Emily the world usually saw. Just a woman carrying the weight of difficult choices. Nathan sat across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Emily broke the silence. I ended things with Adrian. Nathan's expression didn't change. When? The day after we talked. He nodded slowly. That doesn't undo anything. I know. Emily looked down at her tea, but it matters to me. Nathan studied her face carefully. Are you leaving the company? Emily hesitated. Yes. For him? No, she said quickly. For me. She took a breath. I'm starting the agency. Nathan felt a flicker of surprise. The one you never told me about? Emily nodded. I should have. Another silence settled between them. Outside, people hurried past the cafe windows, bundled in winter coats, living their lives. Nathan spoke quietly. I keep thinking about something you said that night. Emily looked up. What? You asked when the last time I asked if you were happy was. Her eyes softened slightly. Nathan exhaled. I realized I don't know the answer. Emily looked down again. Neither do I. Nathan leaned back in his chair. For years he had believed relationships collapsed in dramatic moments. Arguments, explosive betrayals. But now he understood something else. Sometimes they simply eroded. One quiet day at a time. What do you want now? He asked. Emily didn't respond immediately. Instead, she watched the snowmelt sliding down the window glass. I want to figure out who I am again, she said finally. And us? Emily's voice was fragile. I don't know if we can go back to what we were. Nathan nodded slowly. I don't think we should. She looked at him, surprised. Why? Because what we were led us here. Emily absorbed that quietly. So what happens instead? Nathan thought about it carefully. Outside, the winter sky had begun turning pink with sunset. I think, he said slowly, we start by being honest for the first time in years. Emily's eyes filled with tears. That might be harder than ending things. Probably. A small sad smile appeared on her face. You're still the same, Nathan. He shook his head gently. No, I think this changed both of us. The cafe lights flickered on as evening settled over the city. For a long time, they simply sat there together. Not as the perfect couple they once pretended to be. Not even as enemies. Just two people who had loved each other deeply once and were now trying to decide whether that love could survive the truth. Outside, Chicago moved forward as it always did. And somewhere within the quiet space between them, something uncertain but honest began to take shape. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the fragile beginning of understanding.